My name is Brian, and I was around the age of 14 when this happened. I lived in a very rural part of the outside of Nashville, so my house is basically in the middle of nowhere. One day, I was told that my parents would be going out into the city that night for their 25th anniversary for dinner. I was very excited that I would have the whole house to myself, and whenever my parents would go out, they would usually be gone for a long time, and I could really use the quiet. They left the house at around 7, and I just decided to play some video games and watch some TV and later maybe make some dinner. For the first couple of hours, everything went okay. I played a few video games, watched some TV, and mostly just kept to myself. At around 9:30, I was watching a scary movie, and it was getting to a good scene when I heard a knock at the door. I rolled my eyes and paused the movie, but I was also confused that someone would be knocking on our door this late in practically the middle of nowhere. I opened the door to see a man I'd say in his 30s dressed in a Pizza Hut uniform holding a large pizza in his hands. He said, "Hey there buddy, I got a large pepperoni pizza for the Sanders." I was confused as to why he was here and how he knew my family's last name, which is Sanders. I told him, hey, I didn't order any pizza." He said that someone from my address ordered it online. I asked him for his name, and he said it was Joseph. I said thanks and took the pizza from him, and he told me to have a nice night. As he was leaving, though, I noticed something very strange. I didn't see a car in our driveway, so I was wondering how he got here. I didn't pay too much attention, so I put the pizza down and called my mom to ask if she had placed the order. She said that she didn't order any pizza for me. Now I was kinda getting freaked out. I went out my front door trying to look for the delivery guy, but he was nowhere to be found. I then called Pizza Hut asking if they had delivered any pizza to my address. They told me to stay on the line while they checked, and they said, "Sorry, our records don't show that we delivered the pizza to your address." I told them thanks and hung up. I was very suspicious at this point and decided not to eat the pizza and that I would deal with it when my parents got home. I just went to my room and continued to play my games when I heard a slight knock on my window. I opened the blinds and saw the same pizza guy standing there with a wide smile. His eyes were crazy and wild, and he just stood there staring. I closed my blinds and immediately went to the kitchen to call police, and they said they would have a cop there in 15 minutes. I waited for what felt like hours until they finally came and took my statement. I gave them a description of the man, but they never found him, and I still have no idea as to what his intentions were. But I do know one thing. He was definitely not just planning on delivering me pizza.
This is a short and weird experience. It was supposed to be a typical night, and I was craving pizza, so I called up Pizza Hut and ordered. It had to be Pizza Hut, I remember, because it was closest, and I didn't feel like waiting any longer than I had to. I was given an estimated delivery time of about 15 minutes, but after about 50 minutes passed, I was getting irritated. By then, the Pizza Hut car pulled up. A short, blonde woman stepped out of the vehicle. She had her employee cap on backwards. When she was grabbing my pizza box and walking up to the door, I noticed she could barely stand up straight, and she acted like she was going to fall over at any moment. My first thought was that she was on something, but I shook it out of my head, not wanting to judge a book by its cover. Even though that was kind of difficult at that moment. I simply reminded myself that I was finally getting my food, and I was hoping that it wasn't cold by now. It was around that time that I received a call. It was the Pizza Hut I'd placed my order at. They apologized for the delay and said that someone would be out soon. They then explained that one of the employees' cars had been stolen, and that my order was on the way now. I hung up. So, if my order was on the way, then who in the world was this? I noticed that when I picked up the phone, the woman had stopped walking toward my door. Suddenly, she straight up dropped the pizza box and ran back to the car, then sped away, nearly launching herself off the nearby curb at the corner. I ran to the road and got her license plate number. Immediately, I called the Pizza Hut back and asked if that was the right number, and they said yes. They were able to use my call as a tip, and soon the woman was caught, and she was found with a Glock in her back pocket. So that kind of answered the question that was haunting me. Why was she delivering my pizza if she had stolen that car? Why did she take the time to put on an employee's hat that she found? I think, just maybe, I narrowly escaped being the victim of a robbery. Let my experiences serve as a warning to anyone who works for or plans to work for someone delivering pizzas. This happened to me over 3 years ago in spring of 2015. I worked at my local Pizza Hut at the suggestion of a friend who put in a good word for me. I'm a guy and I was 24 back then. The only reason I took the job was because my previous employer had recently passed away and I needed money fast. Anyway, one night I had a creepy and terrifying experience. Because of these experiences, I remember every detail, down to the toppings that were on the freaking pizzas. The first was a regular medium pepperoni pizza to what I assumed were college kids. When I pulled up to the address that I put in my phone, it looked like the kind of house students would rent. The guy that answered the door was middle-aged, and he gave me a bad vibe right away. At one point, the guy tried to invite me inside to accept pay for the order, but I told him I would wait outside like we're supposed to do. Anyway, he got all weird about it. He seemed offended that I denied his offer. He grumbled angrily and then shoved the money in my hand. What was weird about this was, after I had the money in my hand, a woman, either his girlfriend or wife, came to the door, asking me to come inside as well. I gave them both a suspicious look and said, "No, I can't." When I begin to walk to my car, the woman follows me for some reason. I get in my car and she stays a few feet away at the sidewalk. The guy is at the door open with the pizza in his hand, and he's staring too, and they both simply watch me in silence as I drive away. God, that was so eerie. I couldn't help but wonder why they wanted me to come inside, and what would have happened to me if I did. On another occasion, I was out to deliver a medium-sized Supreme pizza. I pulled up to the address. It turned out to be a few blocks away from that creepy couple in the previous story, which I remembered clearly at that time and was just trying to get it out of my head. I get out and do the usual delivery stuff. I knock at the door. There's no answer, so I knock again. Then I try the doorbell on the third time. After what seems like ages, I hear a click and another click. One was the door, but I couldn't place what the second click was. The guy who answered looked upset and asked what in the world I wanted. He was so confrontational, I wasn't expecting it. I noticed he was holding something by his leg, and I noticed there was a glint of reflecting metal on it, like it was a blade of some sort. Maybe that had something to do with the click I heard. I had to make sure I stayed calm, as there was no telling what he'd do. I quickly apologized and walked back to my car. When I looked back, he was standing at his door brandishing the blade, as if to say from that distance, "Make that mistake again, boy, and that'll be your last." Who knew delivering pizzas could be so dangerous? When I was 18, I worked at a Pizza Hut as a delivery guy. I lived in Tucson, Arizona back then. On one particular delivery, I was sent to a certain road that I'd never been to before, which was strange for me because in my free time I drove all over Tucson back then. So I took my delivery car and used my GPS to try and find the house. The GPS did not find the place, so I ended up having to use a map I had in the glove department. Finally, I found the house after half an hour of searching. At first, I thought the customer was going to be angry, but when I saw the house, I thought the whole delivery was a joke. The place was boarded up and breaking down. But I chanced it and went to the door and knocked, despite the place giving me chills. At first, I heard nothing in response. After knocking a third time and waiting, I began to hear creaking and an older-sounding man coughing from inside the house. I looked through a nearby window and saw about 5 men in their 60s on the other side of the door. All of a sudden, something told me this wasn't a good idea, that I was not supposed to be here. But then the door began opening, and a man stepped outside. When he saw me, he looked into my eyes and said, "Get inside, or we're going to hurt you." I made a split-second decision. With the pizza still in hand, I ran for my car. I felt his arm grasp on the back of my shirt, but he couldn't get a grip. So I made it to my car and floored it out of there. I'd never been so scared or frightened before. No one was around to help in these parts. It was basically the boondocks. I quit my job after that. I'm not going to risk my life just to deliver pizzas on minimum wage.